everyone. Thanks for joining me for Aunt Story's, wait, no, that's not my name, Aunt Stacy's story time today. Today I have 3 special books to dedicate to 3 special nieces, and they all have the number 3 in the title. So I'm excited. Let's get started. All right, the first one is The 3 Little Wolves and the Big Bad Pig. And this I want to dedicate to Allie. Allie, I just love you, girl. I love how you have such great ideas and you're such a great friend. So here we go. This is by Eugene Trevisos and Helen Oxenbury. Did the illustrations. The 3 Little Wolves and the Big Bad Pig. Once upon a time, there were 3 cuddly little wolves with soft fur and fluffy tails who lived with their mother. The first was black, the second was gray, and the third was white. One day, the mother called the 3 little wolves around her and said, "My children, it is time for you to go out into the world. Go and build a house for yourselves. But beware of the big, bad pig." "Don't worry, Mother. We will watch out for him," said the 3 little wolves, and they set off. Soon they met a kangaroo who was pushing a wheelbarrow full of red and yellow bricks. "Please, will you give us some of your bricks?" asked the 3 little wolves. "Certainly," said the kangaroo, and she gave them lots of red and yellow bricks. So the 3 little wolves built themselves a house of bricks. The very next day, the big bad pig came prowling down the road and saw the house of bricks that the little wolves had built. The 3 little wolves were playing croquet in the garden. When they saw the big bad pig coming, they ran inside the house and locked the door. The pig knocked on the door and grunted, little wolves, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the 3 little wolves. "By the hair on our chinny chin chins, we will not let you in, not for all the tea leaves in our china teapot." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," said the pig. So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but the house didn't fall down. But that pig wasn't called big and bad for nothing. He went and fetched his sledgehammer and he knocked that house down. The 3 little wolves only just managed to escape before the bricks crumbled, and they were very frightened indeed. "We shall have to build a stronger house," they said. Just then they saw a beaver who was mixing concrete in a concrete mixer. "Please, will you give us some of your concrete?" asked the 3 little wolves. "Certainly," said the beaver, and he gave them buckets and buckets full of messy, slurry concrete. So the 3 little wolves built themselves a house of concrete. No sooner had they finished than the big bad pig came prowling down the road and saw the house of concrete that the little wolves had built. They were playing battledore and shuttlecock in the garden, and when they saw the big bad pig coming, they ran inside their house and shut the door. The pig rang the bell and said, "Little frightened wolves, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the 3 little wolves. "By the hair on our chinny chin chins, we will not let you in, not for all the tea leaves in our china teapot." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," said the pig. So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but the house didn't fall down. But that pig wasn't called big and bad for nothing. He went and fetched his pneumatic drill and smashed the house down. The 3 little wolves managed to escape, but their chins were trembling and trembling and trembling. "We shall build an even stronger house," they said, because they were very determined. Just then they saw a truck coming along the road, carrying barbed wire, iron bars, armor plates, and heavy metal padlocks. "Please, will you give us some of your barbed wire, a few iron bars and armor plates, and some heavy metal padlocks?" they said to the rhinoceros who was driving the truck. "Sure," said the rhinoceros, and he gave them plenty of barbed wire, iron bars, armor plates, and heavy metal padlocks. He also gave them some plexiglass and some reinforced steel chains because he was a generous and kind-hearted rhinoceros. So the three little wolves built themselves an extremely strong house. It was the strongest, securest house one could possibly imagine. They felt absolutely safe. The next day, the big bad pig came prowling along the road as usual. The three little wolves were playing hopscotch in the garden. When they saw the big bad pig coming, they ran inside their house, bolted the door, and locked all the 37 padlocks. The pig dialed the video entrance phone and said, "Little frightened wolves with the trembling chins, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the little wolves. "By the hair on our chins, we will not let you in, not for all the tea leaves in our china teapot." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," said the pig. So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but the house didn't fall down. But that pig wasn't called big and bad for nothing. He brought some dynamite, laid it against the house, lit the fuse, and the house blew up. The three little wolves just managed to escape with their fluffy tails scorched. "Something must be wrong with our building materials," they said. "We have to try something different. But what?" At that moment, they saw a flamingo coming along, pushing a wheelbarrow full of flowers. "Please, will you give us some flowers?" asked the little wolves. "With pleasure," said the flamingo, and he gave them lots of flowers. So the three little wolves built themselves a house of flowers. One wall was of marigolds, one of daffodils, one of pink roses, and one of cherry blossoms. The ceiling was made of sunflowers, and the floor was a carpet of daisies. They had water lilies in their bathtub and buttercups in their refrigerator. It was a rather fragile house, and it swayed in the wind, but it was also very beautiful. The next day, the big bad pig came prowling down the road and saw the house of flowers that the three wolves had built. He rang the bluebell at the door and said, "Little frightened wolves with the trembling chins and the scorched tails, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the three little wolves. "By the hair on our chins, we will not let you in, not for all the tea leaves in our china teapot." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," said the pig. But as he took a deep breath, ready to huff and puff, he smelled the scent of flowers. It was fantastic. And because the scent was so lovely, the pig took another breath and another. Instead of huffing and puffing, he began to sniff. He sniffed deeper and deeper until he was quite filled with the fragrant scent. His heart grew tender, and he realized how horrible he had been. Right then, he decided to become a good, big, good pig. He started to sing and to dance the tarantella. At first, the three little wolves were a bit worried. It might be a trick. But soon they realized that the pig had truly changed. So they came running out of the house. They started playing games with him. First, they played pig pong, and then piggy in the middle, and when they were all tired, they invited him into the house. They offered him tea and strawberries and wolfberries and asked him to stay with them as long as he wanted. The pig accepted, and they all lived happily together ever after. The end. Our next special book of 3 is dedicated to Haven, and this one is called Somebody and the Three Blairs. And Haven, I love you too. You're so smart, you're hilarious, and I just love being around you. So thanks for being awesome. This one is by Marilyn Tolhurst, illustrated by Simone Abel. Somebody and the Three Blairs. Oh, title page. A lot of titles. One Sunday morning in a small house on the edge of town, Mr. Blair, Mrs. Blair, and Baby Blair were just sitting down to breakfast. "It's such a fine morning," said Mr. Blair. "Let's take a walk in the park." "What a good idea," said Mrs. Blair. "Feed of ducks," said Baby Blair. So they took their coats and a bag of breadcrumbs and set out for the park. While they were gone, somebody came to the door. Somebody knocked, and when no one answered, somebody tiptoed in. He sniffed and sniffed. He looked at the breakfast table. "This food is too dry," said somebody. "This food is too noisy," said somebody. "But this food is just right." He looked for somewhere to sit down. "This seat is too hard," said somebody. "This seat is too wobbly," said somebody. "But this seat is just right." He looked for something to play with. "This game is too noisy," said somebody. "This game is too cold," said somebody. "But this game is just right." He looked for something to drink. "This rain is too hot," said somebody. "This pond is too small. But this stream is just right." He looked for somewhere to sleep. "This bed is too big," said somebody. "This bed is too small," said somebody. "But this bed is just right." When Mr. and Mrs. Blair and Baby Blair came back from the park, they saw the breakfast table. "Somebody's been eating my crunchies," said Mr. Blair. "Somebody's been eating my Crispies," said Mrs. Blair. "All gone," said Baby Blair. They looked around the room. "Somebody's been sitting on my chair," said Mrs. Blair. "Somebody's been sitting on my chair," said Mrs. Blair. "Busted," said Baby Blair. They went into the kitchen. "Somebody's been emptying the cupboard," said Mr. Blair. "Somebody's been raiding the fridge," said Mrs. Blair. "Naughty," said Baby Blair. They went upstairs. "Flood!" shouted Mr. Blair. "Help!" shouted Mrs. Blair. "Lot of water!" shouted Baby Blair. They looked in the bedrooms. "It's a burglar," said Mr. Blair. "It's a monster, said Mrs. Blair. It's a big teddy bear, said Baby Blair. It's escaped from the zoo, said Mr. Blair. It's escaped from the circus, said Mrs. Blair. It's escaped down a drain pipe, said Baby Blair. Somebody phone the police, said Mr. Blair. Somebody call the fire department, said Mrs. Blair. Somebody gone home, said Baby Blair. Bye-bye. Come again and play tomorrow. The end. Oh, that one's so funny. All right. Finally, for today, we have The True Story of the Three Little Pigs by A. Wolfe, as told to John Shiska, illustrated by Lane Smith. And this one gets dedicated to Luna. Luna, you're an awesome niece, and I just love your personality and all of your amazing talents, and you're just a really cool girl. So here we go. The True Story of the Three Little Pigs. Everybody knows the story of the Three Little Pigs, or at least they think they do. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Nobody knows the real story because nobody has ever heard my side of the story. I'm the wolf, Alexander T. Wolf. You can call me Al. I don't know how this whole big bad wolf thing got started, but it's all wrong. Maybe it's because of our diet. Hey, it's not my fault wolves eat cute little animals like bunnies and sheep and pigs. That's just the way we are. If cheeseburgers were cute, folks would probably think you were big and bad too. But like I was saying, the whole big bad wolf thing is all wrong. The real story is about a sneeze and a cup of sugar. This is the real story. Way back in Once Upon a Time, I was making a birthday cake for my dear old granny. I had a terrible sneezing cold. I ran out of sugar. So I walked down the street to ask my neighbor for a cup of sugar. Now this neighbor was a pig, and he wasn't too bright either. He had built his whole house out of straw. Can you believe it? I mean, who in his right mind would build a house out of straw? So, of course, the minute I knocked on the door, it fell right in. I didn't want to just walk into someone else's house, so I called, little pig, are you in? No answer. I was just about to go home without the cup of sugar for my dear old granny's birthday cake. That's when my nose started to itch. I felt a sneeze coming on. Well, I huffed and I snuffed and I sneezed a great sneeze. And you know what? That whole darn straw house fell down, and right in the middle of the pile of straw was the first little pig, dead as a doornail. He had been home the whole time. It seemed like a shame to leave a perfectly good ham dinner lying there in the straw, so I ate it up. Think of it as a big cheeseburger just lying there. I was feeling a little better, but I still didn't have my cup of sugar, so I went to the next neighbor's house. This neighbor was the first little pig's brother. He was a little smarter, but not much. He had built his house out of sticks. I rang the bell in the stick house. Nobody answered. I called, Mr. Pig, are you in? He yelled back, Go away, wolf, you can't come in. I'm shaving the hairs on my chinny chin chin. I had just grabbed the doorknob when I felt another sneeze coming on. I huffed and I snuffed and I tried to cover my mouth, but I sneezed a great sneeze. And you're not going to believe it, but this guy's house fell down just like his brother's. When the dust cleared, there was the second little pig, dead as a doornail. Wolf's honor. Now, you know food will spoil if you just leave it out in the open, so I did the only thing there was to do. I had dinner again. Think of it as a second helping. I was getting awfully full, but my cold was feeling a little better, and I still didn't have that cup of sugar for my dear old Granny's birthday cake. So I went to the next house. This guy was the first and second little pig's brother. He must have been the brains of the family, because he built his house of bricks. I knocked on the brick house. No answer. I called, Mr. Pig, are you in? And do you know what that rude little porker answered? Get out of here, Wolf. Don't bother me again. Talk about impolite. He probably had a whole sack full of sugar, and he wouldn't give me even one little cup for my dear sweet old Granny's birthday cake? What a pig. I was just about to go home and maybe make a nice birthday card instead of a cake when I felt my cold coming on. I huffed and I snuffed and I sneezed once again. Then the little pig yelled, and your old Granny can sit on a pin. Now, I'm usually a pretty calm fellow, but when somebody talks about my Granny like that, I go a little crazy. When the cops drove up, of course I was trying to break down this pig's door, and the whole time I was huffing and puffing and sneezing and making a real scene. The rest, as they say, is history. The news reporters found out about the 2 pigs I had for dinner. They figured a sick guy going to borrow a cup of sugar didn't sound very exciting, so they jazzed up the story with all of that huff and puff and blow your house down, and they made me the big bad wolf. That's it. The real story. I was framed. But maybe you could loan me a cup of sugar? The end. Thanks again for watching. See you next time.